and any other member that could not make it, and all the other family members and all the others. If you would all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a reminder that the Alzheimer's are looking for donations, so if your cell phone goes off today during the meeting, you will be contributing to the Alzheimer's Association. I think the Sergeant of Arms set a $10 fee, so let your phones go off, they need the money. And the Sergeant of Arms will be right around. Is our guest here? Okay. We'll have the roll call of officers by our National Secretary, Elaine Hughes.
Good morning, everyone. Roll call. Art Pike, Region 1 Vice President. Evelyn Kirby, Region 2 Vice President. Don Stewart, Region 3 Vice President. Paul Johnson, Region 4 Vice President. Region 5. Carol Eck, Region 5 Vice President. Jerry Smith, Region 6 Vice President. Very present. Region 7 Vice President, Frank Impena. Region 8 Vice President, Helen Sajak. Region 9 Vice President, Lanny Ross. Region 10 Vice President, Bill Martin. And President Bodwin is here. And Secretary Hughes is here. Vice President is absent. And Treasurer is here, Dick Disson. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. And Jerry, you may want to come down the front with the rest of the group. Now it gives me great pleasure and an honor to introduce our next guest. Catherine Archuleta. Since becoming Director of the Office of Personnel Management on November 4th, 2013, Catherine Archuleta has dedicated herself to being a champion of a diverse, engaged, and inclusive federal workforce. She also has made it her priority to give agencies the tools they need to hire, develop, and retain a world-class workforce for the 21st century. As the President's Workforce Ambassador, Director Archuleta hears from and counsels federal employees about their work and talks with students, young workers, mid-career professionals, and executives about what she likes to call the purpose-driven mission of federal service. Director Archuleta is the first Latina to lead OPM. She began her career in public service as a school teacher in Denver. She continued to follow her passion for public service as an aide to Denver Mayor Federico Pena. During the Clinton administration, she was Pena's chief of staff in the Department of Transportation and later his senior policy advisor at the Department of Energy. By then a sought-after leader, Director Archuleta returned home to Denver and was a senior advisor to Denver Mayor John Hickenlooper. She returned to federal service during the first 2 years of the Obama administration as Chief of Staff to Labor Secretary Hilda Solis. She then served as National political director for President Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. Clearly, Director Archuleta has lived a life of public service that today she encourages others to pursue. When asked what she would like her OPM legacy to be, she often answers that we made it possible to sustain a government workforce of unparalleled talent and resourcefulness that reflects the diversity of America. Director Archuleta is a friend of all government workers. Director Archuleta is a friend of NARFE, and I'm happy to report, a NARFE member. On your recent magazine, you see Director Archuleta's picture on here. I'm happy to say I consider Director Archuleta my friend, and I'd like to introduce Director Archuleta.
It's all mine. Well, I'm especially pleased to be on the cover because I was watching the news this morning and there's a lot of really beautiful women on the cover of the TV after some award show last night. And I feel like I'm right there up them with the importance of my cover photo. So thank you very much, Joe. I'm so glad to be with Joe today. You know, he's a great friend. We've been meeting in Washington. We had a meeting in February, and we talked just a few days ago or weeks ago on the when OPM published the regulation for phased retirement. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but it's always a pleasure to talk to Joe. And as he said, I am a card-carrying member of NARFE, and I'm the right age to do so. So I'm looking forward to your hard work to continue to do the incredible work that all of you have been doing for NARFE and for Joe for his nearly 30 years with the FAA. I was looking at Joe's bio last night and realized that he and I served at the DOT at exactly the same time. And I'm sure that our paths crossed then as they do now. And I have such incredible admiration, not only for him as an employee of the government, but also his incredible work for NARFE. So congratulations to NARFE and to Joe for all your hard work. Thank you. I want to acknowledge that Congressman Alan Grayson is here today, and I want to thank him for his support for the federal workforce and for our nation's seniors. Every day is an important day on the Hill, and I know that NARFE and the congressman have worked tirelessly to support our federal family. It is so important that you do. You will all have persevered through some pretty tough times for federal employees and retirees. And all the while, you keep the pressure on to make sure that the benefits are not cut. You have also kept your members well informed every step of the way. So thanks to all of you. Everywhere I go, I talk to audiences about how much I appreciate and respect the federal workforce. I know how hard federal employees work each and every day to serve the American people. I don't need to tell you that, because that would be like singing to the choir. I cannot imagine how high I would have to count to add up all the years of service that are represented right here in this room. So first of all, I want to thank you. Each and every one of you for your service to our great country. Before I talk to you about some of the ways we are enhancing our services to federal employees and the continued strength to build our health benefit program, I need to ask for your help. As the President's chief recruiter, one of my highest priorities is to help agencies fill the jobs that open up when people like you leave federal service and move on to the next phase of their lives. In the last 9 months as the director of OPM, I've visited 10 colleges and universities, and I'm on my way up to Mid-Florida Tech later today. I've also met with veterans. I've met with community groups to spread about the word about how satisfying and how fulfilling it is to serve our fellow Americans. I talk to them about the purpose-driven mission of public service, something that you all know much about. I was in California recently talking to the Silicon Valley companies. I met with a vice president of Google, and he had shown me, they'd taken great care in showing me their environment. When you first walk on campus, it's beautiful, it's lush. There are bicycles that you can borrow to go wherever you want on the campus. There's a big, wonderful bus that delivers people who don't want to bike in. You walk in and there's an espresso machine. You can have your coffee, just plain coffee. You can have espresso, you can have a coffee and latte, and you want something to eat for that morning breakfast? Sure, there's fruit, there's everything healthy because it's California. And then there are some high-calorie foods as well. And then around lunchtime, you get to take your lunch break, and you go to the corporate kitchen. I hesitate to use the word kitchen because that's not what it is. It is a banquet hall. And the young people there get to choose whatever they want as part of their perks of their job. They go back to their offices and they have wonderful environments. They have every piece of modern equipment they can possibly imagine. And if they can't see it, they'll build it. And, you know, I walked away from that and I sat down with to talk to the vice president, very, very knowledgeable, wonderful man. We got to talking about how hard it is to recruit. It's hard for them to recruit as well. So they have to offer those perks. And I said, how do I compete with that? How does government compete with that? Very smart man, this Google vice president, looked me straight in the eye and said, you can't. He's right. I can't compete at that level. He paused, I thought, and we came to the same answer. He said, you can't compete with me on the perks, but I can't compete with you on your purpose-driven mission. Every day, federal workers come to work, not because of the coffee, not because of the bicycles, not because of those healthy foods. They're not there. But every day, you give the federal workers the opportunity to serve the American people in ways that I can't. That's what I talk about. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do for me. I need you to help me recruit. I need for you to talk to your friends, to talk to your families, your sons, your daughters, the young people across this country. And you do represent every part of this country. And I want you to tell them about the experience you had as a federal employee. Tell them about your mission of public service. I know that all of you could have had more money. Certainly you could have had more perks. But you joined the federal workforce because you had a calling to serve your fellow Americans. I need for you to share your stories about how you made a difference in people's lives. It's not enough that you talk to one another. You are the experts who can talk about what it is like. Tell them about what you did and the differences you made. Let them know that there are federal jobs that can fulfill their public service passion and offer them tremendous opportunities to grow. Share your pride. I know I have it. I talk about it every day. I am proud of my service, not just now, but in all the years that I've had in the federal government and at the local government level. I am proud of what I've done and what I've accomplished and who I've helped. And I know that you feel the same way as I do. Please share. I would be most appreciative if you would do this for me. So let me talk to you a moment about some of the initiatives I've worked on at OPM. I've only been here 9 months, but a lot is getting done. As I've said, we've just published the long-anticipated phased retirement regulations. I want to share something with you. The only call I made, and the one that I wanted to make, was about this important program, was to my dear friend Joe. I want to update you on the FEHB program, and I want to tell you about the ways we are enhancing the OPM Retirement Services Unit. As Joe mentioned to me recently, you've all been eager to see the new phased retirement program get underway, and so have I. It's been at the top of everybody's question list for the last 8 months. I appreciate NARFE's support of the initiative. All of you know how important it is to pass on to the next generation the institutional memory, the expertise, and the knowledge that veteran federal employees have. This program will enable us to benefit from that expertise before those who are ready to retire actually leave. And it will allow our employees to be completely sure that they are ready to move on and also to ease their way into retirement. It's a win-win for the government. Phased retirement will also give agencies more time to do smooth and orderly succession planning for key positions. Full-time employees will be able to work part-time while starting to collect their retirement benefits. Phased retirees will be required to spend 20% of their time mentoring their federal employees in order to pass on their knowledge and their skills. I feel very strongly about this part of the program. I have been lucky in my life to always have had mentors who have helped guide me, advise me, and frankly, have told me to get a grip when I began to feel sorry for myself. I've tried to pay it forward by mentoring colleagues when I was at the Department of Transportation, Energy, and Labor, and now as OPM Director. What a gift employees who are nearing the end of their careers can give to the next generation by passing on their knowledge and advice. I also want to talk to you today about the continued strength of the Federal Employees Health Benefit Program. Since the President signed the Affordable Care Act in 2010, FEHB has added participants, negotiated for repeated record low premium increases, and continue to be a model health benefit program for the nation. We at OPM consider FEHB to be the original health insurance marketplace. For more than 50 years, half a century, FEHB has provided federal employees, retirees, and their families with affordable, reliable, and high-quality health care. Since the Affordable Care Act was enacted, FEHB has added 11,000 tribal members to its plans. We have provided health insurance to more than 325,000 children of FEHB members who, for the first time, could remain on their parents' plan until they turned 26. And we are preparing new regulations to let us cover more part-time, seasonal, and temporary workers as the new health care law prescribes. What do these expansions mean for you and your families? Well, it's math. The more people covered under FEHB plans means that we have more negotiating power with our insurance carriers when it comes to premium increases. Did you know that, for example, for the past 3 straight years, the average premium increase for FEHB members was less than 4%? This is the first time in 20 years that we have had such stability. It's too early for us to predict what the 2015 rates will be, but my health and insurance team is talking with insurers now, and those new numbers will help. Also, since we last met, we've added the Self Plus One enrollment category, something I know that NARFE has pushed for. This new enrollment type, which will provide more flexibility to many of you in this room, will start in the 2016 plan year. And in speaking of enrollment, it's never too early to begin to plan for the fall benefits sign-up period. This year's open season is November 10th to December 8th. So as you can tell, I'm a really proud federal government employee. I'm very proud of the work that our OPM team does to make sure that FEHB remains the premier employee health care program in the land, and in fact is a major recruiting tool for me. Finally, this morning I want to talk to you about the work OPM is doing to improve our retirement services. Working on the retirement services is not only one of my top priorities, it is an important part of my OPM strategic plan. I've created a retirement services working group that is concentrating on 3 areas: customer service, particularly the call center and our online services; an information technology strategy for case management and claims adjudication, particularly improving the way we handle FERS disability cases. Now I know that some of you are frustrated by having to wait when you dial the call center. So I want to say we've made some improvements. We recently added 15 new agents, including Spanish speakers, and we're adding even more over the next few months. The average call wait time for the past 6 months has been about 11 minutes, down considerably. The center is now open at 7:40 in the morning until 5 p.m. On weekdays. A little tip, my staff tells me the best time to call are Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays, between 9 a.m. and Thursday and Friday afternoons until 4 p.m. Wait time is even less. Better than that, however, we've taken a look at how we can improve our services online. You can check out the services online at servicesonline.opm.gov. We find that most of the time, when people call our call center, they're calling about direct deposits or federal and state tax form changes, address changes, or annuity statements. You can use our services online for all of those. We're developing a marketing strategy that will encourage our retirees to use that quicker, that quicker website to get their services. Again, servicesonline.opm.gov. We hope that starting this fall, for example, you'll be able online to request a duplicate retirement book, ask for a copy of your ID card, and get overpayment information all online. Those are the most frequent call requests. It would be so helpful if people use the call center only for problems and concerns that cannot be resolved by going on the web. We are also working as hard as we can to develop a plan to better track a retirement case from the moment it gets started. So we're focusing on transitioning the retirement program into a paperless system that will truly honor a federal employee's service by authorizing accurate retirement benefits on the day that they are due. We've made some progress here. We're giving agencies electronic records that we maintain. This helps the HR manager across government to better estimate benefits for their prospective retirees. It also helps the managers submit more complete packets for the retirees. The more complete someone's initial retirement submission, the quicker OPM can process it, and that is my goal. So you can see that we are examining and overhauling every aspect of how we can handle our retirement claims. How we make sure that you have access to the most up-to-date information, and that we incorporate the newest technology all along the way. We want to maintain a first-class retirement system. And you actually are helping us make that happen. We made some changes to the website, and then we conducted a focus group. We had NARFE members come in. We sat them in front of the computers. I think there was about a dozen. They sat in our offices and they worked on the computers with us, along with our technicians, our programmers, and our program people. They showed us where we could make improvements. So we're much appreciative, again, of our relationship. As I said, we want to maintain a first-class retirement system because you deserve no less. So I'm going to leave you this morning where I began, with thanks. Thank you for your years of dedicated service to the people of this country. I have served in 2 administrations in my professional career, and it has been my honor to stand beside hundreds of thousands of my coworkers who come to work every day, ready to perform, eager to serve, and proud to be part of the federal employee family. It is my honor to stand beside all of you. Thank you.
Catherine would like to present you with a small token of our
Thank
appreciation.
you, Joe.
And thank you so much for being our friend, being my friend, and for working with us.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we have, waiting for a congressperson to show up, but apparently they haven't shown up yet. Dick, would you introduce the dais, please? Want that? Plus these. Okay, on 2 pages.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. President. We have, first of all, we have Paul Lamb, our parliamentarian. Okay. We have our Secretary Committee. The chair is Melinda Atwater from Florida. Vice Chair is Clifford McGraw from California. The Timekeepers Committee, Daniel Jenner from Oklahoma. The Vice Chair is Carol Jo Reeves from Florida. And Bertha Clark from Georgia. Okay. Louis Katz from New Jersey. Evelyn Seabrook from Florida. And John Shealy from West Virginia.
And Elaine Hughes, the National Secretary.
Okay.
Maybe we can include those. Okay. I'd like to recognize our National Executive Board. Please call when your name is called, and just stand there, and we'll have the applause after. The Vice President, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is homesick, but the Secretary, Elaine Hughes. Hello, Stan? The Treasurer, Richard Thyssen. Regional Vice President, Region 1, Art Pike. Region 2, Evelyn Kirby. Region 3, Dawn Stewart. Region 4, Paul Johnson. Region 5, Carol Eck. Region 6, did he come down? Okay, Jerry Smith. Okay, hiding back there. Region 7, Frank Campina. Region 8, Helen Zajac. Region 9, Landy Ross. And Region 10, Bill Martin. These are your NEB members. Let's give them a round of applause. You can stay there or you can go back to your areas if you prefer. I also would like to introduce the past presidents that are here. Margaret Baptiste served from 06 to 10. Margaret. And I haven't seen him, but it's Charles Carter, who served from 93 to 94. He was supposed to be here. Is he here? Okay, Charles Carter. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Your presence is really appreciated here. Although we also have present here in Orlando 19 headquarters staff members to support the convention, you will see them working in various locations around. You'll be able to identify them by their orange lanyards, and they're pretty hard to miss. So if you've got any questions or you see them, you can talk to them, or if you have a request, just ask them, and they'll try to help you out no matter what. Credentials Committee, would all the delegates please take out your blue voting card out of your packets, or wherever they are. Or green. Is it green? Okay. I didn't realize that. Okay. That's blue. I don't know. Whatever. They tell me this is blue. Anyway, you should all have one of these, and there should be a number 1 on there. And the number 1 is because you're number 1 in the organization. You are. You're the most important ones in the organizations. You're all number 1. We consider you that way. You'll be using this whenever you vote on the floor. We're allowing the members and alternates to sit with their regions. That's why we won't have a voice vote. We'll be using these. So when you vote, you'll have to raise your blue card because that's what we'll be counting. And that way you can sit with your friends. As in the past, when speaking at the microphone, the color-coded cards are used to indicate what the delegate is up to speak about. When you wish to speak, go to the nearest microphone, and they should be scattered all around here, 14 of them, and tell a sergeant of arms what you want to talk about. He has the color-coded cards, and they will signal the dais as to what your topic is, by the different color cards. Also, this year you will see on the microphones a little red light. If the red light is lit, that means your microphone is hot. You can talk. Until the red light goes on, it's not hot. So we'll be turning those microphones on and off. And as I say, the little red light on the top of it will indicate whether it's hot or cold. We're going to have the first report of the Credentials Committee. The Credentials Committee will present the first credentials report. You may want to turn to the back page of your resolution books if you want to record these numbers. The chair is Vivian Nathanson from California. Vice Chair, Joseph Landry, Louisiana. And Vivian, would you like to make your report over there, please?
Good morning. We're supposed to have all these numbers up on the screen, please. No? Yeah, Dan gave them to you. Anyhow, I am Vivian Nathanson. I've been a long time.
Almost reading.
Oh, okay, good. They're kind of small. The report I have is a little bit better, so if you listen, you can fill in the left side of your page. This is the daily registration statistics for Monday, August the 25th. It will change again tomorrow. Right now, we're being represented by 986 chapters, which is 77.6%. Registered delegates, 657. Delegates at large, 61. subtotal 718. Alternates, 31. Members and guests, 36. And the subtotal is 67, making the total in attendance 785 members. Mr. President, you have a quorum. You may presume to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. The question is on the adoption of the credentials report. You have it in the front of you. I'm not going to read the numbers again since they were up, but all those in favor of the credentials report, please raise your blue card or green card or one card. Opposed? Okay, we have a vote in the affirmative, and we will now go on to the next business, the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee, the chairperson is Kathy Opper from Virginia. The vice chair is Tim Gardner from Ohio. And here they come.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Kathy Arpa from Virginia in Region 10, and I am the chair of the Rules Committee for 2014. I would like to introduce the other members of the committee. Tim Gardner from Ohio in Region 8. The other members, I don't see them up here. There's Arlette Thomas from Florida in Region 4, and Anna, three. Anna Pike from Maine in Region 3. Maybe that's okay. I would also like to thank them all for their hard work and expertise. I would also like to thank Paul Lamb, our parliamentarian, for his advice and guidance to the Rules Committee. The committee's proposed rules were distributed to the delegates yesterday afternoon before the opening ceremony. And everyone should have a copy. It's 2 pages. The committee rules developed the convention. Committee Rules Committee developed the convention rules, which, when adopted by the assembled delegates, will facilitate and expedite the orderly conduct of convention business. The committee's proposed rules, okay, I read that. By direction of the Rules Committee, I move that the convention rules be adopted as printed.
We have 6 amendments that we will discuss. The first amendment, well, Rule 1, there is no amendments. Is there any discussion on Rule 1? Seeing none, we'll go to Rule 2. Rule 2, we have an amendment to 11.2. And the last sentence where it talks about the yellow cards are used to call a previous question. White, yellow card motions shall not interrupt the current speaker. Amendment by Richard Strombotny that Section 2, in 4th sentence, strike the word white in the white slant yellow card. Motion shall not interrupt the current speaker. So he wants the word white stricken from that particular rule. Any debate?
Yes, Mr. President. I'm Dick Strombotny, the maker of this resolution. I'm from Gaithersburg, Chapter 581. And the simple reason for striking the word white is to permit interruptions of the current speaker when they have a point of order or a request for parliamentary inquiry. This is the Roberts Rules of Order recommendation, or that's the way it's stated in Robert's Rules. And so I would suggest that we approve the amendment so that in the event that a speaker has misstated something or a delegate needs to have clarification, that they will be able to interrupt the speaker for that purpose. And I urge adoption of the amendment.
Kathy, do you want to comment on that at all?
I think what he says makes sense, so I agree with him.
Any other comments? We now will go on the amendment to Rule 2, and that is to strike the word white from the last sentence where it says white slant yellow card motion shall not interrupt the current speaker. All those in favor of that amendment, please raise your blue voting card. All those opposed, the motion is carried. The amendment is carried. Okay. Then we have the second amendment, and that is by Mr. Strabotny from Gaithersburg. In Rule 2, Rules for Debate, Section 2-4, in the fourth sentence, insert after request for information a comma and the following: point of order and parliamentary inquiry. So he is inserting after request for information in the fourth sentence a comma and the words point of order and parliamentary inquiry. Any debate, any comments?
Mr. President, I'm Dick Strabotny from Gaithersburg, Chapter 581, the author of this amendment. And the proposed rules of the convention says that the 12 minutes for debate will not be reduced for a request for information. But there are some other parliamentary procedures that should not be counted within the 12-minute limit. This amendment would simply add a point of order and parliamentary inquiry to request for information. You need not be an expert on Robert's Rules of Order to recognize that these parliamentary procedures that would take minutes to resolve, should not be counted against the time permitted for debate. I hope you will agree and approve the amendment to the convention rules.
Thank you, Dick. Kathy, any comments?
My comment is we need to get Mr. Strabotny on the Rules Committee.
Any other comments? All those in favor of the proposed amendment, please raise your number 1 card. Opposed? The amendment has passed. The next amendment we have by Mr. Strabotny, Chapter 581, Gaithersburg. In Rule 2, Rules for Debate, Section 2-5, insert after first sentence, the maker of a resolution or motion shall be given the first opportunity to speak. Again, I'll repeat it. In Rule 2, Rules for Debate, Section 2-5, insert after the first sentence, the maker of a resolution or motion shall be given the first opportunity to speak. Any comments? Yes.
Do I need to continue introducing myself? I've got 4 more of these motions.
Just for the record.
This one, just for the record, I'm Dick Strombotny from Gaithersburg, Chapter 581, and that's in Maryland. And I think it's about the 4th or 5th larger chapter in NARFE. You can disregard that promotional statement. Now here, in the rules of previous conventions, it was explicitly stated that the maker of a motion or resolution would be given the first opportunity to speak. And this statement is missing from the proposed convention rules here. This amendment would once again make it clear that the maker of a motion or resolution gets the first chance to speak on it. This is common usage and makes the most sense in any debate. We don't expect delegates to be fully knowledgeable about parliamentary procedure. The latest edition of Robert's Rules of Order, 11th edition, has 669 pages of text and 48 pages of tables. Adding the language of this amendment to the proposed rules just makes it clear what the situation is, and I urge you to approve it.
Thank you. Ms. Harper, any comments?
I just looked at the 2012 and it was in there, but our committee had decided we didn't need it, but based on Mr. Strombotny's comments, I believe it is necessary.
Okay, any other comments? All those in favor of the amendment, and I will read it one last time. In Rule 2, Rules for Debate, Section 2-5, insert after the first sentence, the maker of a resolution or motion shall be given the first opportunity to speak. All in favor, raise your blue cards. Opposed? The motion is carried. The next amendment we have is offered by Mr. Strombotny, Chapter 581, Gaithersburg. In Rule 2, Rules for Debate, insert new section 2-8 as follows. 2-8, notwithstanding the 12-minute limit in 2-4, debate on Resolution 14-01 may continue for a total of 30 minutes as needed. Would anybody like to speak on that, Mr. Strombotny?
Yes, thank you again for your patience, folks. We'll get through this quickly and then we'll be able to go on to a vote on the rules themselves. I want to point out that Resolution 1401 regarding the future of NARFE committee recommendations and the National Executive Board actions is arguably the most significant resolution that we will be considering. However, the proposed convention rules would limit debate to the same 12 minutes as any other resolution. The amendment proposed now would authorize debate to continue for a total of 30 minutes, and regardless of whether you support or oppose Resolution 1401, I hope you will agree that debate for up to 30 minutes would lead to better understanding of Resolution 1401 than a 12-minute limit on debate. And so I urge you to approve this amendment.
Thank you. Ms. Harper, do you have any comments?
Unfortunately, we did not look at all the resolutions as we were doing our rules, and I'm sure if we had, we probably would have agreed with Mr. Strombotny, so I see no problem.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Would you turn on mic 10, please? Oh, I guess that mic was already on. Mic 5 is on. Mic 10, go ahead.
I'm Sandy Vogel from 1594 San Antonio. I just have a question. I have the book, and it's my first time, so please bear with me. What generally does Resolution 14-1 talk about? Or is that, can we summarize it? Because it's not in, where is it?
14 dash,
Oh, okay.
yeah, 1 is in the book, but parliamentarian tells me I should not summarize it.
No, it's going to be discussed.
But would you like to? No, okay.
It's going to be discussed.
And actually, we will discuss this at the Lunch and Learn, and we will discuss it the first thing this afternoon. Let's go to number 5.
Am I on? Okay. My name is Yogi Riley. I'm from Chapter 61, San Fernando Valley, California. I rise to speak against this amendment. I believe there's a lot of a hullabaloo on 1401. The intent and what would actually be accomplished is merely moving forward to try and plan for the future. We've got more important proposals that if you want to extend the time and make a rule, a suspension of the rules at that time, it might be more in order, but to automatically go into 1401, I don't believe it's necessary to go to extended time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other person up to speak? 5? Is there someone at mic 5? Without having those little red lights that the Sergeant of Arms used to have, it's hard to tell who's up to speak. 5?
My name is Arthur Joseph, Chapter 1552, Margate, Florida. I believe in the statement, brevity is the soul of wit, and I think that 30 minutes is excessive. I'm a retired air traffic controller. I've attended many an air traffic control convention. We've come up with some pretty contentious things, and we never allow people to speak 30 minutes. Thank you very much.
I agree. Okay, number 14.
I'm Jean Caputz, Chapter 1795. This new resolution, or new amendment is rather lengthy, and I would suggest that perhaps it be read again, first of all. Secondly, I'm not sure whether the 30-minute extension is going to apply to all resolutions or to the specific one that the gentleman mentioned.
Just 1401. Okay. Next one is 13.
Lonnie Ross, Region 9 Vice President. It seems to me that all of us received the booklet 60 days in advance of this convention. We've spoken on a number of occasions at this convention already on the future of NARFE. I would expect that everybody by now has digested. I'm not sure what 30 additional dialogue will add to this resolution. I vote against the amendment.
Thank you. Number 12.
My name is Dan Riley. I'm 1789, Arizona, Sun City, West Arizona. I'm voting against this because 30 minutes is too much and people start falling asleep. Thank you.
And number 1.
I'm Hank McGee, immediate past president of the Hawaii State Federation of Chapters. And the 2 previous speakers expressed my opinion. We've all been studying this thing, reading about it. It's been in NARFE magazine. It's been in letters distributed by the president. It's been everywhere. I think we should vote on it in 12 minutes and 6 minutes.
Does anyone want to speak in favor of the amended motion? Yes. 9.
My name is Harold Forrest. I'm a member of Chapter 1522 in the city of Havre de Grace, Maryland. I would like to speak for the resolution. I think the future of NARFE committee did a magnanimous job. However, there are several considerations which should be looked at very carefully. And I think that extending the vote, the discussion for at least 30 minutes would help bring those points out. Thank you.
Okay. Number 14.
I'm George Eads from the Washington State Federation, Chapter 181 in Bremerton, Washington. I would speak against this amendment. I think there's an old saying, after all is said and done, there's more said than done. And I think it would have people use that 30 minutes perhaps to go out and recruit a NARFE member. Would be much better than trying to get our claim of fame. So 12 minutes is enough for anything to be debated.
I thank you. Number 5.
I'm August Fatoti, Chapter 15 Party in Region 1. I move the question.
The question has been moved. All those in favor of moving the question, please raise your voting cards. Opposed, raise your voting card. The question will be moved. All those in favor of the amendment, and the amendment is to, let me read it again. In Rule 2, Rules for Debate, insert the new section 2.8 as follows. Notwithstanding the 12-minute limit in 2-4, debate on Resolution 1401 may continue for a total of 30 minutes as needed. You are voting on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your voting card. This will be easy. For all those opposed, the amendment has not been approved. The next one we have has been submitted by Mr. Trombotny, Chapter 581, Gaithersburg. In Rule 3, Elections and Balloting, insert a new section 3-7 as follows. 3-7, resolutions placed on the electronic ballot for decisions shall be those on topics specified in the bylaws, and any resolution approved for placement on a ballot by a majority of voting delegates in a floor vote after open debate on the resolution. You need me to read it again?
Yes.
First time I've seen it too. 3-7. Resolutions placed on the electronic ballot for decision shall be those on topics specified in the bylaws, and any resolution approved for placement on the ballot by a majority of voting delegates in a floor vote after open debate on the resolution. And Mr. Trombotny, you'd like to talk on it, I'm sure.
Oh, all right. Dick Trombotny, Gaithersburg, Chapter 581. Thank you once again, Mr. President. Many of you have heard parliamentarian Paul Lamb describe how resolutions would be placed on the ballot. But perhaps the Rules Committee did not agree. In any case, when I reviewed the Rules Committee report yesterday, I did not see any place in the proposed convention rules to authorize ballot voting on resolutions. So the purpose of this amendment is to fix that problem. Now, the first part of the amendments is really simple. It's because our bylaws specify that certain types of resolutions have to be on the ballot. And that first part just covers that situation. The second part is where the meat, where the rubber hits the road. This says that after we have a full debate on a resolution, perhaps some of the bylaws resolutions we'll cover this afternoon, that the delegates here in a floor vote can decide whether or not to have that resolution appear on the ballot. This is, after all, the proposal from the parliamentarian. I would not want to speak for him, but I think this fixes a problem with the lack of authority in the current rules as proposed to permit resolutions to go to ballot. And I hope you will agree to support this resolution.
Thank you. Kathy, would you like to speak on it?
I would like to ask our advisor, Paul Lamb, to respond to that.
Mr. Lamb says no. The decision basically is whether or not, when we discuss the bylaws this afternoon, whether we decide to approve or disapprove any of the amendments by a floor vote. The alternative is that you get total chapter votes the next morning, Tuesday morning, tomorrow morning, and all of the amendments, bylaw amendments, will be on the ballot. So that is, Mr. Strambotny is suggesting that we do not put all the amendments on the ballot tomorrow morning. I believe I've summarized that, Dick, is that correct? Can we put that mic on number 9?
Yeah, I don't believe you did.
Okay.
Somehow in making the arrangements for the convention and the rules committee and the proposal for handling the bylaws resolutions, there was a gap. And the purpose of this amendment is to provide a mechanism by which the delegates can decide as a group on any particular resolution going forward as a ballot measure. Otherwise, the Assembly could decide to vote up or down any or all of the bylaws resolutions. And I think there are some significant bylaws resolutions that could and should be on the ballot, and there are some that are kind of trivial, actually. And so I think it's a matter for the Assembly to decide which of these resolutions will go on the ballot, if any.
Any other comments? What's the mic over here? Number 5?
Yogi Riley, Chapter 61, San Fernando Valley, California. I have a point of clarification. Correct me, if we were to go to the Assembly and vote, and whether the vote was overwhelmingly for or against, are you saying that because of the suggestion by the parliamentarian that regardless of how we voted, we would have to go back and vote in the booths? I mean, because I don't understand the need for this mumbo jumbo to me.
Okay, and what is being proposed, and we were going to discuss this just before we brought up the bylaws, the same topic, was that we would have debate, but we would not vote on the floor pro or con. That would go on the ballot. You'd have your debate on all of the bylaws amendments, just like your 12 minutes and 6 minutes for amendments and so forth. But we wouldn't take an actual vote. And reason being that you could go on the ballot and vote your chapter strength. It would be more representative of what the members want, because you can only have one vote here, but there you can have 12, 14, 15, whatever your chapter strength is. And that was going to be the proposal, and we were going to ask you that this afternoon, which way you wanted to go. But now we're asking you now through Mr. Strambotny's suggestion. Any questions about that? Number 14.
I'm George Eads from the Washington State Federation, Chapter 181, Bremerton. I would vote against this amendment. I think the ballot should be less crowded instead of more crowded. And I feel that it would be a waste of time and probably cost some money to be changing and added to the ballot such things as this. So I would vote against that.
Thank you. We have a white card on number 9. Well, number 9.
I rise in opposition, not a white card.
Okay. Go ahead and speak. Would mic number 9 be put on, please?
Rodney Adelman, Chapter 1789, Sun City, West Arizona, Federation President. I rise in opposition to the motion by Mr. Strombotny. My concern is that if you're here holding proxies, those proxies would not be represented in a floor vote, but they would if any of these resolutions or bylaw amendments go to the ballot. Also, on a vote on the floor, the president must make a determination. For bylaws, for example, that requires a 2/3 vote. He must make a determination based on the cards that he sees. I believe these resolutions are too important to be decided simply by the president's determination. We need to have actual numbers to decide on some of these very important resolutions. So again, and my third point is that if it's not a clear-cut 2/3, more or less, the president will call for a vote by division, and we're going to actually count, and we'll be here until tomorrow counting ballots. So I rise in opposition to this motion.
Thank you. I believe we have a point of order on mic number 8.
John Shealy, Chapter 1236, West Virginia Federation. I just want to make sure that I totally understand this. As is right now, all resolutions will be on the ballot for vote. Is that correct? No.
That is not correct.
Okay.
What is being proposed, John, is, or what will be proposed, or we will ask you, we would have asked you this afternoon, is to put all the bylaw amendments on the ballot.
Okay. And then, okay, that's all I need. Thanks.
Just the bylaw amendments. Number 11.
Don Binder, Washington Federation, Chapter 1192, Tri-Cities, Washington. Rise in opposition. Most of the comments have already been made, but these issues dealing with NARFE and its future, way too important to be decided by the blue cards. Accurate counts need to be absolute and positive, and as others have said, carrying proxies, a lot of us have representation for chapters that don't have any members here, and they've asked us to vote in the best interest of NARFE. If we're only using the blue card, there's no way we can do that and represent them.
Thank you. Number 4. Mic number 4.
Evelyn Kirby, 1372 Tidewater, Maryland. Just a point of clarification. A comment was made that the bylaws prescribe what is voted on ballot. My understanding was that the bylaws say what must be on a ballot, but it does not limit what can be on a ballot.
Thank you. Mic number 10.
I'm Robert Harrell with the Alabama Federation, and according to our current bylaws, all bylaw changes must be by ballot, and I think that we oppose this motion because what you have done so far is expedite our balloting and made it easier for all of the delegates to vote in a voting booth instead of having a lot of rigmarole and discussion about it. It's not even germane to the situation.
Thank you. And just for clarification, you will have debate either way. You will debate the proposed amendments. Any other? Hearing none. We are now going to vote on the amendment. and I will read it one last time. Wait, number 7.
Thank you. I'm Nan Call. I'm from Chapter 637 in New Jersey. I am actually very confused. Well, I think I know, but I have a feeling nobody really knows what you're voting for or against at this point. I heard the President voting say that you were going to address this with the bylaws, but you also said, let's do it now, basically. And I agree with Dick Strombotany that if now is the time, we've had the debate, and basically we're debating, what we debated was, should it go on the ballot? And that is what our bylaws say. And I think that it's not specific to the one resolution that everybody's talking about being so big, but anything that is with the bylaws, if you get a call for division, as one gentleman said, you'll be here all night. It's much simpler, better, more accurate to just put it on the ballot and say specifically here up front that anything that affects or is specifically stated requires a vote of a large percentage, 2/3, should go on the ballot. There's still time.
Thank you. And number 9.
Yes, I think I'm the last speaker, so I get one more chance. I'd like to bring up a couple of points. Not all of the bylaws amendments relate to the future of NARFE recommendations. There are bylaws amendments proposed that can be disposed of quickly. We will not be here all night, and if there was an extended debate, there are ways to cut that off. I've been in many conventions, and the problem of getting a 2/3 vote is quite surmountable. That is not a problem. You may think it's a problem, but it's not a problem. Occasionally you may have to have a serpentine vote, but there is no need to have both trivial and important bylaws amendments on the ballot. Tomorrow, when you are doing your electronic voting, it's a lot different having to put your a number of votes on each of 17 or 18 boxes. Just think of the time that it's going to take to clear the ballot box. I might also point out, maybe fairly or unfairly, that we have one very large chapter that has 8.5% of the ballot votes. And again, I urge you to support the amendment.
Thank you. Number 12.
Mr. President, Dan Riley, 1789, Sun City West. I call for the vote.
Thank you. You've heard the motion to call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your blue card. Opposed? Raise your blue card. The debaters will stop and will now go on the vote on the motion. I can read the motion, or I can try to summarize it for you, because there seems to be some confusion. 3-7, resolutions placed on the electronic ballot for decision shall be those on topics specified in the bylaws, and any resolution approved for placement on the ballot by a majority of voting delegates in a floor vote after open debate on the resolution. All those in favor of this amendment, please raise your voting cards. All those opposed, please raise your voting card. The amendment is defeated. And we have one last amendment by Mr. Strombotany, Chapter 581, Gaithersburg. In Rule 4, consideration of resolutions, Sector 4-4-3. Strike forth the sentence, each resolution requested to be withheld will be adopted or rejected by the Assembly delegates without debate. I'm just reading it as it's written. I'll repeat it one more last time. Each resolution requested to be withheld will be adopted or rejected by the Assembly delegates without debate. Mr. Tromboni, you want to speak on that?
Mr. President, with all due respect, when you repeated it, you forgot to say that that language would be struck. Strike that language, because that is a language that limits debate on withdrawn motions. I've been attending and participating in these conventions since the 1998 convention here in Orlando. In all of these conventions, the practice for considering resolutions has been to permit a resolution to be withdrawn for separate consideration upon request. This way, the delegates can hear the arguments on the resolution that has been withdrawn. However, the proposed rules of this convention would change that practice drastically. After a resolution has been withdrawn, the delegates would decide whether or not to accept it or reject it without debate. And now how fair is that? I don't think that's fair at all. It's a vast departure from past practice in these conventions. And I urge you to approve the amendment to strike that language.
Thank you, Mr. Strombotny. And in all fairness, as this is written, you had a couple extra words in it, but each resolution as it's written here, requested to be withheld will be adopted or rejected by the Assembly delegates without debate. That's the section. You had repeated a couple words in your submission. Kathy, do you have any comments?
The committee felt that each committee has been working for weeks and months and has spent several days here, and they decided which one should be accepted or rejected or withheld. We feel the committee spent a lot of time working on this, and that's why this sentence was put in like this.
Any other comments? Number 4.
Thomas Longo, Chapter 2363, the E chapter, formerly a member of Maryland, now I live in Indiana. From what I recall from what Mr. Lamb said at the orientation yesterday, the procedure is as follows. If two people want to withhold a resolution, they may request that it be withheld for debate, and that request would go before a blue card vote to accept or reject withholding the resolution for debate. That particular vote would not be on whether or not to accept the actual resolution, but whether or not to debate it. Therefore, I think that Mr. Strombotny's, I believe that is the intent of the wording in the present rules, and that Mr. Strombotny, with all respect, may be misinterpreting that.
We have a point of order at number 7.
Yes, Arnie Endick, Chapter 1000, New Jersey. As a point of information, I request under 4-3 that a request for a suspension of the rule, the portion dealing with a withhold form must also be submitted to a convention official at the table next to the podium at least 30 minutes before the general session begins.
And what are you requesting?
That it be suspended because it was unavailable.
You're requesting to eliminate
that form.
That requirement.
Yes.
Oh, the form?
That requirement for the form because it was unavailable.
But we'll make sure the forms are available. Next one, number 8.
I'm Benny Cabot from Chapter 1557, Palm Coast, Florida.
I have a problem when you limit debate, you just arbitrarily. I understand and I appreciate all the work that the committee did, but we all have a voice and we all have an opinion. Unfortunately, we all have an opinion that needs to be voiced. But I firmly believe that debate is necessary. That's why we're all here. So I'm against limiting or getting rid of debating.
We are not getting rid of debates. There will be debates on every amendment. Number 5.
I'm Ray Williams, Region 3, Chapter 545, North Georgia. As I understand what's happening here with that amendment, is we're trying to bring back the fairness of the voting system. Most of these resolutions have been generated by this Bond Committee, and they've done a super job. But I thought the bottom line was, here are some things that ought to be voted on. Let the delegates vote on it. We seem to be deciding that, hey, I got something else to do. I'm going to go eat catfish, and I don't want to vote. I don't want to stand around here and listen to a bunch of politicians tell us a lot of things we don't need to hear. So I'm in favor of this amendment because we should be voting on anything that affects the rules of this committee. The organization.
Thank you. Number 11.
Don Binder, Washington Federation, Chapter 1192, Tri-Cities, Washington. Rise in favor of this amendment. The issue is you would be voting to make a decision on a withhold without hearing any arguments except from the committee. There's a significant number of delegates in this room that all, as the lady said, we all have opinions. And to at least give us the opportunity to voice those issues before the entire body, before they vote on whether to adopt or reject the amendment is the issue. Thank you.
Number 12.
David Adams, Chapter 89, Michigan Federation. I also am not in favor of limiting debate. It's through debate that many members are able to gain an understanding and some clarification as to what's being discussed. We should not try to limit discussion on debate. We should really want to make sure there's clarity. That should be the primary objective of coming here, and to debate and to listen to what other delegates have to say. So I would be in favor of not limiting debate. I agree with Mr. Stromboni on this one.
Appears to be some confusion on what is being proposed. Let me read it again. Each resolution requested to be withheld will be adopted or rejected by the Assembly delegates without debate. So we're not limiting debate on anything that we're talking about. We're saying the Assembly will decide whether or not for any resolution that had been requested to be withheld, they'll make the decision. Yes, we'll debate it, or no, we won't. So, number 9?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. Let me repeat what I actually wrote. In Rule 4, Consideration of Resolutions, Section 4-5, strike the 4th sentence. And the 4th sentence is the language that you repeated. And I don't want to repeat it because we've discussed it enough, and I fully agree with Mr. Adams and Mr. Binder. The language that is to be struck is the language that limits debate. And by approving this motion, you will go back to past practice and have full expanded debate.
Number 4?
I am George Schaub, President of Pennsylvania Federation, and I rise to speak in favor of this motion. It's not often I agree fully with my esteemed colleague from Maryland, but many times we do come together after debate. On this issue, my concern is not with the hard work and the diligence that the committee has put forward in this process, but just to make sure that the convention understands that what can happen when you look at the report, all those items suggested for rejection will get one up or down vote. All those items that stay in the report for acceptance get one up or down vote. There are some items in there that maybe the committee did not have full explanations or clarity or understanding of what was fully intended and the effect on NARFE. So the idea is if a chapter or a federation puts forth a resolution or an amendment to the bylaws and gets support from another chapter or another federation to withhold it from the blanket treatment of doing it in mass, then we need to vote in favor of this amendment from Dixon Botany and make sure that due diligence is given to the very serious work that we're here to do. I vote in favor of it.
Thank you. Point of order on number 8.
I call for the question.
The question has been called. All those in favor of calling the question, please raise your voting cards. Opposed? Please raise your voting card. The proposal has been passed. We'll now vote on the motion that has been written. I'll read it one last time. In Rule 4-4-3, strike forth the sentence, each resolution requested to be withheld will be adopted or rejected by the Assembly delegates without debate. All those in favor of this amendment, please raise your voting card. All those opposed? The amendment has been passed. Thank you very much, and thank you, Kathy. Well, I guess you should remind me. I guess we need to vote on the rules as amended. We didn't do that, did we? Fired. All those in favor of the rules as amended, please raise your voting card. All those opposed, thank you. Now we do have rules. Kathy, anything you want to say?
Thank you for all your patience. All of us are new in this committee, and we learned a lot from everybody with your comments, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
I have been advised that Congressman Grayson will be here very shortly. In fact, they said he'd be here right this minute, but I think we can cover one last item, and that is the program agenda. In your packet, you received a program for this convention, and we will attempt to follow this program as closely as possible, but we must recognize that debate on issues and other unforeseen factors could alter the times and that changes may be necessary. We will make every effort to follow the program as printed and inform you of any changes. The question is on the adoption of the program for the 33rd National Convention as printed with changes as necessary. All those in favor, please raise your voting card. Opposed? I thank you so much. We now have the program. The affirmative vote has it. With the adoption of the credentials report establishing a quorum, the standing rules of the convention, and a program with changes as necessary, the 33rd National Convention is open for business. We finally got there.
Joe.
With those attending...
He's here.
Oh, okay. Disregard that, what I was going to say. We now, gives me distinct pleasure to introduce Congressman Alan Grayson. No stranger to standing up for what he believes in, Congressman Alan Grayson is currently serving his second term in office. He rejoined Congress this year after a brief 2-year hiatus. Among the many issues he must tackle every day, Representative Grayson has been leading the charge to fight a switch to the chain CPI for determining your annual COLA. If that wasn't enough to prove he's a true friend of NARFE, Congressman Grayson also boasts a 100% NARFE voting record. And if that wasn't enough to show how highly he thinks of NARFE, upon returning to Congress last year, he rehired then NARFE Legislative Director Julie Tagan as his Chief of Staff. He stole it from us. Please join me in giving Congressman Grayson a very warm NARFE welcome. Thought you said he was here.
He is. He's just not in the room.
Now that's what you're going to hear in a few minutes when he shows up. I needed to practice it one last time. Anyway, while we're waiting for him to come in the door, I do want to recognize that a lot of you are in fact all of you are very dedicated NARFE members. But we have one person here that is 101 years old and still an active NARFE member. Would Robert come, please stand up? But 101 and still attending the conventions and still active, isn't that super? And he's right over there. Would all of you that are attending the convention for the first time, please stand up? That is great. We really thank you for coming here. We hope that you'll attend many, many more of these in the future. The minutes of the 2012 National Convention were approved by the National Executive Board, and the minutes of this convention will be reviewed and approved by the Executive Board. And the next, okay. Oh, here he is, Congressman Grayson. I introduced you before you got here, so they all know who you are. Thank you for coming. It's all yours, sir.
Welcome to Central Florida, everybody.
Thank you.
We had Sarah Palin visit us a couple of years ago. She stayed at the Animal Kingdom Lodge. She told everybody that from her porch she could see Africa. We had Anthony Weiner come after that. He took a selfie photo with an elephant, or at least part of an elephant. We had Mitt Romney come last year. He loved Main Street USA so much, he tried to buy it. We had Al Gore come here a few years ago. He went to Epcot, tried to convince people that he invented the parade. And fireworks, too. Fireworks. So welcome to Central Florida. I actually was a retired federal employee last year before I got reelected to Congress. I ran for Congress and lost, ran for Congress and won, ran for Congress, lost, ran for Congress and won. So courtesy of Central Florida's voters, I was one of you for 2 years. Enjoyed the experience thoroughly. I think of it as unpaid leave. So since I am a NARFE member, you may applaud. I receive the monthly magazine. In fact, I receive it every month. Enjoy it very much. Gives me my clues as to what I'm supposed to be voting on and how to vote. Also, how my pension's doing. Speaking of which, about that pension, I always find it puzzling that people would tell me that after one term in office, how much I should be enjoying that lifetime pension at full pay. Oh, and also the free health care benefits that I would get with my family for having served for one term in Congress. There is this strange misperception on the part of the public that members of Congress have all these benefits that we simply don't have. And maybe you've experienced the same thing, I don't know.
Yes.
Yes, so people will come up to you and say to you, wow, it really must be great being a former federal employee with your free health care for life. And then you have to explain to them, no, that's not exactly how that works. Sorry. And they must really be happy for you that you're getting paid double your last year's salary for the rest of your life. You have to explain, no, that's not true either. But the public is full of misperceptions about federal employees. I think Steny Hoyer, standing here, could probably give you better examples than I could. Or Frank Wolf. But the fact is that for some strange reason, the public has a serious misconception of what it's like to be a federal employee. Now, admittedly, most people get their ideas from the media. So that's probably where they get their ideas, like the idea that you all live the life of Riley. And I think that that's unfortunate. We've reached a point where certain professions get vilified while others get exalted. I mean, to give you an example, I think that most people who grew up watching Hill Street Blues are very fond of police officers in general. Police procedurals are pervasive in modern TV. It's been that way for the past half century. So generally speaking, people like cops. And they have this inexplicable antipathy toward drug dealers. I don't know why. Maybe it's the same phenomenon. And then you ask yourself, well, in modern times, when depicted in the media, are federal employees closer to cops or drug dealers? And unfortunately, in the way federal employees are depicted, it's often closer to drug dealers, even though many federal employees actually are cops. This is very unfortunate. In fact, I would say that for the past half century, we've seen a deliberate and constant effort to misrepresent what it means to be a federal employee. All right, let me do a little snap poll here. Raise your hand, please, if you were amazingly lazy while you were a federal employee. Okay, no takers on that one. Raise your hand if you worked only 3 days a week. You came in at 10 o'clock and you left at 3. Okay, now, those of you who are actually in charge of waste, fraud, and abuse, please raise your hands. Nobody. But that's the public's idea of what it is to be a federal employee. They don't seem to understand that you had to work just as hard or harder than people in the private sector. And that you didn't get paid more, in many cases you got paid less. And this is unfortunate. So it is incumbent upon us who know the truth, and I say us because I was a federal employee working for the Veterans Administration when I was 18 years old. And a member of the union, by the way. It's incumbent upon us to try to fight back, to try to dispel the lies that are told about what it means to be a public servant. Now, there's a term you hardly hear anymore, except if somebody's trying to make fun of you. I'm a public servant. You all were public servants. And yet, somehow, people get this strange misconception that we're the boss, that we're taking their tax money away from them, that we're stuffing it in our own pockets. It's ridiculous. So, whenever we hear a lie like that, it's important for us to fight back and to tell the truth. And that's what I invite you all to do. Let's make sure that when you explain to people what it was that you did for a living before you retired, you do it with pride. You don't have to feel like you have to apologize for being a former federal employee. You do it with pride. You say to yourself, I was a public servant. And then you say to the person who's asking you, I was a public servant. I was someone who didn't just look out for myself, didn't just make the biggest buck I could make, didn't just try to take advantage of other people and take what I could take and give back as little in return and call the difference profit. No, that's not what I did. What I did was I was a member of the community in service of the community. So be proud. Show some pride. And I think the day will come when we will all wake up and realize that it is our public servants, our federal employees, that protect us, that keep our water clean, that keep our air clean, that make sure that our roads are drivable, that educate our children, that protect us from fire, that do the things that need to be done to make this a civilized society. That is what you did. That is what your current colleagues do. That is what I do, and I say it with pride. What about you? All right, I understand we have some time for Q&A, is that correct? Is that correct? Okay, and, okay, please, go ahead. You're on the dais, so you must go first. Yeah.
I have sent you a speaking request. I am the president of Chapter 95, your chapter that you belong to. I sent you a speaking request in March of 2013. I followed it up in June. I followed it up in September. In February of this year, in February of 2014, I resubmitted my request. I followed it up in June, and this is now August. I know you're on recess, and that's why I was really looking forward to have you come to our chapter meeting. So now, in front of all your fellow I officially would like to see you at our next meeting, which is Monday, September 8th. So I am now here to get your official response.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Words cannot possibly express the gratitude that I feel right now and the undying love and affection I feel for you. Short answer to your question is, first, we will track down who to fire for not responding to your requests, And secondly, which is sort of the point of your question, we are in session at 6 p.m. on September 8th in Washington, D.C. So the answer to your question depends upon what time your meeting is.
We will accommodate you.
All right, then in that case, you've made me an offer I can't refuse. So I will be happy to join you before the flight that day. And I'll feel really good about it. Next question. All right, now an easy question.
Hello?
Yes, Mike 9. Mike 9's over there.
Gary Roundtree, Chapter 1936, Maryland. My question, Congressman Grayson, is you being a former Federal Department of Veteran Affairs employee, could you elaborate a little bit on the SESs, the law that just was passed on firing SESs for the Department of Veteran Affairs?
Well, you know, this is an unfortunate thing. This is part of the vilification that we're seeing, the continuous vilification of people who are simply trying to do their job. You know, the fact that something happens that's bad somewhere in a giant, if I can use this term, bureaucracy like the Veterans Administration doesn't mean that everybody who works for the Veterans Administration should be vilified for it. And what we're seeing is this enormous effort to find scapegoats and to punish people. I mean, what I analogize it to is it's like blaming 9/11 on the buildings. That's what it's like. And it's very unfortunate, I think very unsavory. There are many, many good people who do good work at the Veterans Administration. One thing you never hear is that there's an organization that does consumer satisfaction surveys at the University of Michigan. And that organization has done annual consumer satisfaction surveys at the Veterans Administration concerning the healthcare system. And they find that the consumer satisfaction at the Veterans Administration in the healthcare system is higher than any one that they've ever measured. Higher than Google, higher than Microsoft, higher than General Motors, higher than Ford. So people have got this misconception in their minds that somehow there's a pervasive dissatisfaction and that people in the Veterans Administration who depend upon the VA for their care are somehow, in general, being disserved, when in fact those very people swear that they are better off in the VA than they would be in their local hospitals or with their local doctors who know nothing about the special care that veterans require. So yes, I mean, the bill that you just gave is one example of that. Another example of that is that there was an appropriations rider that was passed by the House to prohibit VA employees from ever getting bonuses. And I think it has to end. I mean, it's really unfortunate that this is the best our political system can come up with. If there's a problem, let's solve it. But let's not punish and blame the people who are trying to solve it. Mike 12. I don't know where that is, but...
Over here.
Okay. Mike 12.
I'm Charles Carter, past national president of NARFE. My concern is that over the last 20 years, I've watched the government cut federal employee jobs and contract them out. Federal employee is dedicated to this country, takes an oath and raises his hand to protect this country. Contractors are loyal to the contractor, and they don't take such an oath. The difference between a federal employee and a contractor, it can be clear if it's needed. But in many cases, there's jobs today that should be under the umbrella of the federal government. We can't just diminish this and say we're cutting government. At the same time, we're hiring millions of contractors to do the job that federal government employees done in the past. This contracting out of our jobs, I think, is wrong. and I'm appalled by what's happening to the Postal Service. They're just tearing it down left and right, and I think the postal workers are the greatest people in the world that we have in this country. We need more respect for federal employees, and we should not let these jobs go to contractors who have all these so-called perks that was mentioned earlier, you wasn't here. We should keep these jobs in the federal government and keep them under the umbrellas so that they will have the integrity they should have and not the corruption that happens in the federal government. And these guys in the federal contractors will pay fines, $50 billion, $50 million. How much did they make in profit when they pay fines like that? You can't do that with the federal government. Let's bring back the jobs to the federal government and have federal employees and represent this country like it should be. Thank you. Not contracted out.
Well, I agree. As I mentioned, I was a federal employee back in 1976 when some of you had not even retired yet. And I was a government contracts lawyer starting in 1985 and represented over 100 different government contractors in the course of my legal career. And I venture to say I can't think of a single example where the government actually saved money by contracting out any work. What happens is that in these A76, OMB Circular A76 analyses where they compare what it would cost to have a federal employee do the work versus contracting it out, they always put their finger on the scale in favor of contracting it out. And this happens over and over again, and the result of that is to literally disable the government, to disable the government. Now, I remember at the beginning of my legal career, representing government contractors, I remember that at that time, the Army Corps of Engineers knew how to build a bridge. Now, at this point, the Army Corps of Engineers only knows how to award contracts to build a bridge. That's it. So time after time after time, you see federal agencies performing vital federal public functions hollowed out to the point where all they know how to do is to award contracts. And that's a shame. It's not only a disservice to the people who are doing that work, but it's a disservice to the taxpayer and to the American public. I prosecuted war profiteers in Iraq for several years before I was elected to Congress. And I remember hearing from my whistleblowing clients tales of how government employees who were repairing radios were ordered to teach private contractors how to repair radios, then turn the work over to them, and the government had to pay them 4 times as much. 4 times as much. So this mania about the so-called efficiency of the private sector turns out to be a myth, turns out to be a lie, and it has to be dispelled. And people like you need to speak up, tell the truth, and make the American people listen. Mike 9, lucky number 9. Here's this gentleman at 8, you know, just sort of waiting and waiting and waiting. We'll see if he gets lucky or not. Mike number 9.
Bill Ferguson, Chapter 422, Laurel, Maryland. Unfortunately, I just have cost the health system hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally, of which I did not pay a cent. Now, I'm on a number of medications where I'm almost being beggared by the cost of the medications above and beyond what's covered by my policies. I understand that the Veterans Administration can deal directly with the pharmaceutical companies to force down the price of medications, but OPM is not allowed to do that. If that's correct, why can't that be changed?
Well, the short answer is that the law, current law, prevents it, and it can be changed. We make the laws, we can change the laws. We can't break the laws, we're not allowed to do that, despite what you may have heard. But it is essentially an artifice, what you're describing, and it doesn't exist in other countries. You know, in other countries with both single-payer systems and some mixed public-private system, large buyers are always allowed to negotiate. That's true in Canada, it's true in Great Britain, it's true in many other countries where the life expectancy is actually longer than it is in the United States. And, you know, it's a fair question. The answer that is often provided is that the drug companies need to make a profit in order to be able to continue to invent new drugs. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that the burden needs to fall on you and on people like you. You'd think that being sick would be enough of a punishment to start with, but then you pay your drug bill and you find out you're not only sick, but you're also poor. And that's simply a function of how our insurance system is set up and how our public benefits are set up. Yes, the drug companies do need to be able to make some kind of profit in order to be able to continue in business and to invent new drugs. A new drug costs $1 billion on the average to create from scratch. But that doesn't mean that you personally need to be paying that money. You probably don't even have $1 billion, do you? No, I didn't think so. So that's a decision that we need to make. And what we find is that, whether we're talking about retirees in the public sector or we're talking about Medicare beneficiaries, what we do is we end up chincing people. We end up cheating them out of a few pennies in order to say that they're contributing to their own health care, when in fact nobody really wants to be sick, except possibly hypochondriacs. And the result of that is that we end up taking people who are vulnerable because they're sick, because they're retired, because they're on fixed income, and we make them even more impoverished than they might otherwise be. If we're going to say to our federal employees, when you retire, your health care needs will be met, and you pay into that system even while you are an employee, then that should be the way it is. And the same thing is true of Medicare. We are introducing this year a bill that expands Medicare to cover actual needs that aren't currently met because the law says they're not to be met. Hearing aids, glasses, dental work. The name of the bill is Seniors Have Eyes, Ears, and Teeth Act. Seniors have eyes, ears, and teeth. In case there's any confusion on that point, and we want you to keep those teeth too. So those medical needs should be covered without your having to reach so deeply into your pocket. Oh, Mike 8, sir, your patience has been rewarded.
Okay, thank you. My name is James Phillips out of Region 3. I understand, well, right now, our COLA is being calculated under the CPIW, I believe, but I understand on Capitol Hill, or there's been talk about getting us our COLA under the CPIE. E stands for elderly. Can you give us the status on that, and you think that it will go anywhere, or?
The status on that is that we're not making enough progress, and that's the simple answer. Many seniors got very angry a couple of years ago when they found that their cost of living increase for 2 years in a row was 0. And Congress was uncomfortable with that, particularly since we have to face the voters every 2 years. So we sort of nudged it up by $250, even though the cost of living increase calculation had been 0. Nobody actually believes the cost of living hadn't changed. It's just that the measurement was done in a way that indicated that it hadn't changed, when in fact it had. And as you point out, it's on the basis of consumers in urban areas in general, as opposed to the kinds of bills that the elderly face. If I may be blunt, dentures don't figure in very much in the cost of living of 20-year-olds. But they do figure in substantially in the cost of living of certain other people whom I will not mention at this point. And the same thing is true of many other examples that I can give you, even ones that are unrelated to health. For instance, older people tend to spend more on food than younger people do. Just to give one random example. They tend to spend more on travel than younger people do. So the result of that is that if you actually want a legitimate measure of the cost of living, you need to focus on the cost of living of the people whose needs are being measured. The principle is clear. Congress is making no real progress on that. First in line would be Social Security recipients, if we can reach that point. Those bills have been introduced in the House, and they are the proverbial stuck in committee and haven't made any real progress. These days, the first question anybody asks is, well, how are you going to pay for that? The answer is people are paying for that out of every paycheck, so it's not a fair question. And I'm hopeful that at some point we will see that pass, and then following that we'll see equal relief for federal pension beneficiaries, because you're in the same boat. Your needs are not being measured properly, your cost of living is not being measured properly, and we need to do that.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Mic 5, please.
Good morning and welcome. My name is Les Wimmer from Chapter 423 in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm a retired reservist and still a current federal employee. In 2013, the current federal employees experienced many negative, bad things. Too many to begin to list right here. But I want to speak about the furloughs that occurred. I was singled out as a federal employee to be furloughed twice while contractors stayed employed. Military personnel stayed employed and kept getting their paychecks. And I know as time went on, the contractors faced some furloughs, but it was very, very disturbing to see us singled out when they're trying to shut down the government and prove political points in Washington. And that's my point.
Well, I voted against that, so I have a clear conscience. There are some other people who voted for it. I'm not so sure whether their conscience is clear at this point or not. I think it's actually, what you're describing, a good example of what I referred to earlier, this sort of vilification of federal employees. There was no reason to do any of that. The idea that you could somehow shut down the federal government might have been appealing to 2 or 3 Tea Party members somewhere in the United States. But all of us, the rest of us who are adults, recognize that the federal government performs useful and necessary functions, as you demonstrated every day of your working lives serving the federal government. And I think that's one of those examples where, I don't know how many of you are Jewish, it's the danger in Washington, D.C. is that you start to believe your own mishigas. Mishigas is the Yiddish term for lunacy, craziness, bizarre misconceptions. And that's an example of what was happening there. It was an embarrassment for all of America in the eyes of the rest of the world. And it simply never should have happened. We have serious problems in this country, and we have to try not to create new ones by doing things like shutting down our own government. In your case, the specifics are, I think federal employees in general, there may have been some exceptions, but in general, federal employees were paid in arrears. That doesn't change the fact that you can't pay your credit card bills in arrears. You can't pay your mortgage in arrears. You can't pay your rent in arrears. You can't pay your food bill in arrears. So that created a certain amount of unnecessary dislocation in people's lives. Also, the way it was done was humiliating. Federal employees were sent home without any idea of when they'd be called back to work. And that was degrading to both them and to their work. And I have to remind people about this sometimes. Sometimes people say, Alan Grayson, I don't like you. And I say, well, you may not like me, but you should show respect for the job that I have and respect for the 170,000 voters who wanted me to be their congressman. Now, the same thing is true of federal employees in general. Federal employees shouldn't be treated like yo-yos the way they were during the shutdown. I think that was very unfortunate. It should never happen again. I predict that if it does happen again, you will see the current leadership of the House of Representatives removed bodily. Mike 2.
I'm Lee McGrath, Chapter 221, Massachusetts. As I understand that the Congress of the United States mandated that federal retirees have Medicare as their primary insurance. I also am hearing that Medicare has been outsourced and that this Medicare is reaching many of the federal retirees trying to recover money by suing some third party. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, but you're combining two different things, so it's like we're in apples and oranges territory. I could explain it if you like.
I didn't understand what you said.
Well, almost feel the same, saying the same thing, but I think I do understand what you're referring to, and I can try to explain it. There's a long time push to get federal employees off of what certain political elements regard as a program of health care that is too generous, that is more generous than somehow federal employees deserve, even though they pay for it in every paycheck, which no one seems to pay attention to or even understand. To give an example of that, I was taken off of the federal employee benefit program for health care last year, thanks to a majority vote in the House of Representatives, one other thing I ended up voting against, that said that even though I am a federal employee, I can no longer get federal employee benefits. The theory again being that they were just too good for anybody in Congress to enjoy. So we, congressmen and many of our staff, were required to join the DC Healthcare Exchange, even though I don't live in DC. And frankly, if you take your constituent service seriously the way that I do, I don't even work in DC, I work in Central Florida. So the result of that was that they got away with that in our case as a member of Congress. I no longer have federal health care benefits. There is a pervasive push to do the same thing to all federal employees, and that continues on and on. Again, I don't think it's rational in any sense. You pay for these benefits in your paycheck. There's no reason why you shouldn't have them. There's no reason why it should be taken away from you. So that's the first part of what I think you were referring to. Second part is that in Medicare, there are certain elements of Medicare benefits that are recoverable by the government. The government recently made an effort through the tax system to recover some of the unpaid benefits from the heirs of Medicare recipients, from their children, for instance, from their spouses, and this was done long after the fact. They just basically had these things laying around for 10 years or more, and somebody decided to do something about them, so they went out and tried to recover them from third parties. That effort basically has been aborted because, you shouldn't get a bill 10 years after the fact if you didn't have any idea what's coming. So that's no longer likely to go forward, even though technically, legally, those third parties are responsible for the unpaid bills. Does that answer your question? I'll assume it does, and we will move on. Microphone
for another 5 minutes.
Okay, microphone 4.
Thank you for being here. I'm Sylvia Otten from Wilmington, North Carolina, Region 10.
Well, thank you for being here, too. Let's give her a round of applause. Because if you weren't here right now, it would be a dead mic.
Well, I'm glad the man brought up the point of federal employees versus contracting, because federal employees are now at a 10-year low. And one of those reasons, I think, could be what affected our family was the WEP GPO. My husband and I both worked to qualify for 40 quarters of Social Security, but as soon as a federal worker becomes employed, they get penalized for that. And starting with the federal government in the 60s, we made a whopping $6,000 annually raising 2 little children. Well, we grew in the government and worked with the Department of Transportation, like Mrs. Archuleta, and then he retired. We could use those 40 quarters credit, and I know it's come up in the House, and since you're a congressman, but it doesn't get out of committee. And there's only about 1 million that it affects now. And I guess you're all waiting for us all to die off.
Well, not you personally.
Well, real quick, the healthcare situation, we have appreciated our benefits, and we do pay every month into them. However, I, as a person now at this age, don't need the affordable health care. I need coverage for what he and I need. We don't need maternity coverage now. We raised 4 daughters, and they're grown and they're paying for their own health care. Why can't we purchase the health care that the individual needs and then get a credit for it at tax time rather than giving these bonuses ahead of time?
Are you sure you don't need the maternity? You know, I want to point out to you that Mary...
I'm 78.
Okay, you know, Mary also thought she didn't need the maternity coverage.
She was young.
All right, well, to answer your question, the important thing is to make sure that there is minimum coverage that applies literally to everyone. Listen, I don't think I need maternity leave coverage either. I don't think. You may not need coverage for prostate cancer. I would venture to say you probably don't. But the fact is that one of the efforts that we're making is just simply to make sure that people have decent coverage that they think they're paying for if problems do occur. When my first child was born, the insurance company told me that they wouldn't cover the birth. They told me that 2 months after the birth. So that was a $10,000 bill. And I think that in the world that we live in, and given how complex health coverage and health needs are, it's reasonable to make sure that certain needs are met at a minimum for everybody. So yes, I do understand you probably are not going to be pregnant. I get that. I understand that. But let's just have a rule that we'll just make sure that everybody who is pregnant is covered. That's all that's about. It doesn't really cost you anything extra.
Okay, can you get the WEP out of committee?
Geez, as soon as I'm Speaker of the House, it'll be the first thing I do. One last question. All right. Mike A, lucky number 8. Yeah.
Thank you. From Palm Coast, Florida.
All right. Now, anybody else who's waiting, that is the last question, so if you're waiting another mic, you might as well sit down. I'm sorry about that. You know, I want to get you off your feet. You deserve it. Take a rest.
I really am upset by the fact that there is no answer for the offset. We worked very hard all our careers in all jobs that we had. The federal job I had didn't pay the bills, so I had to get a part-time job and I applied for Social Security. When I went for my pension, I was told that my benefits were cut more than half from Social Security. The amount I get from Social Security barely pays the Medicare bill. So it's a joke. My mother can't get hers because she's getting a survivor benefit from the Railroad Retirement Board. She worked as an RN for 45 years. It's obscene that it's lain in Congress's lap since 1984. That's long enough.
No, I think you're absolutely right. We make all these weird, basically discriminations against federal employees, against certain other kinds of employees, some state employees as well. And what you find out is that if you really dig into it, they're all arbitrary. They don't actually serve any concrete purpose. It's just that somebody at some point thought it might save some money, so they pushed it into effect. And we are literally seeing the sins of our grandparents or our parents and the bad decisions they make descending upon people like you. It is true that some of these problems not only go back to 1984, they go back to 1934. They go back to when the Social Security system was first created. In the case of Medicare, they go back to 65, when the Medicare system was first created. I can show you all sorts of anomalies apart from the fact that arbitrarily hearing aids and glasses and dental work are not covered under the Medicare program. I could show you all sorts of anomalies like that in both programs. And what we really need is the will to say that we're going to be fair to everyone.
Okay, and acknowledging that that's how you feel about it, and that's how we, I'm sure most of us feel about it, when are you all going to get off the dime?
Well, I wish I were dictator. Man, that would be a nice gig. We work within a system where you need to get 218 votes to do anything. And, it's a shame that there's a current obsession with punishing federal employees, with punishing federal retirees, with punishing anybody, frankly, who there's a decent chance might be a union member, to really get to the heart of the matter. And I understand the frustration that you feel. It's the frustration of living in a democracy. We are, in many cases, your so-called elected officials have been captured by special interests and don't really perform their function the way that they should. They don't represent. You make a good argument. I can promise you that I'll do my part. I will co-sponsor the bill that you're describing. If I end up on the Ways and Means Committee in the next Congress, I'll make sure that the chairman gets an earful about it, and hopefully we'll at least have a hearing. And I'll try to find a way to maneuver it to the floor. Last year, out of the 435 of us, I passed more amendments than any other member of Congress. I wrote more bills than any other member of Congress. Slate magazine said I was the most effective member of Congress, which admittedly isn't saying much. Business Insider said I was the most productive member of Congress, which definitely isn't saying much. But where there's a will, there's a way, and I'm constantly looking for opportunities to do a good thing. So you put a bee in my bonnet, and it'll stay there, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Congressman. In order to stay on the schedule, bad news for you, you're not going to hear the report from the officers. At least not at this time. We're going to delay that until either later in the convention, or maybe we'll do it in 2016. But anyway, will the Sergeant of Arms come up with any announcements? And while he's coming up, try to make today's Lunch and Learn at 12:15, because it'll give you information that you really need in order to vote tomorrow. And tomorrow, we'll have voting from 6 to 9. But this afternoon, be prepared for a long afternoon, because we want to finish up the bylaws this afternoon. So when you come back at 1:30, after you go to the Lunch and Learn at 12:15, then be prepared to stay as long as it takes to finish up the bylaws. Okay, Sergeant of Arms, I was very nice to you just now.
You were. I'm very surprised.
You may not like me, but please respect the job that I do. And there's a reason for this. We have 4 lost and found items. The very first one is this lovely green hat that I'm wearing. Somebody has lost this. You may pick it up at the Sergeant at Arms table. Mrs. Lorette Miller from Cape Coral, Florida. I have your notebook. And Margaret Murphy, President of the Illinois Federation. I have your badge. And the final thing that we have, the fourth item, I have a gold 2012 recruiter badge with the NARFE, big NARFE N logo on it. So you may pick up all these items either on my way down or back at the table. Okay. All right, now for all the announcements, and there are a lot of them. You received, there were blue evaluation sheets that were passed out at the tables. You may turn those in to the basket at the NARFE office just outside our convention hall. The chairman of the protocol committee, whoever he or she may be, please see me at my table in the back of the room when this session is over. The Alzheimer's table, they have a process that will allow you to use your credit cards to make a donation. It's not a machine, it's a process. And up here up front, in a, I believe it's a round basket of some sort, you can get the following forms: withholding forms for resolutions, resolution amendment form, new business form, and courtesy resolution forms. All right, and here we go. Region 4 reception tonight, 6 to 8 p.m., room 1756. Michigan delegation, brief meeting at the close of morning session, meet at Region 4 sign. Region 6 members are invited to a reception for Marshall Richards in room 1556 at 5:30 today. Doris Pearson of the Alabama Federation, see Bill Shackelford at Region 10 candidate table in the exhibit hall. New York Federation will be meeting in the lobby in front of registration right after at the end of today's session, so that would be after 5 o'clock, or whenever the president dismisses us. Will the Region 9 Federation presidents meet in room 1256 at 5:30 today? Region 9 delegates are requested to gather in front of the stage at the close of business today, Monday, for a group photo. Iowa Federation meet in front of section, well, I think they meet Region 5, in front of Region 5 at the end of today. The Maryland Federation will meet in the Region 2 area of this room at the close of today's session. And Region 2 again has a reception tonight, 6 to 8 p.m. in room 1056. The Tennessee Federation meet behind Region 10 area when we recess for lunch. All right, please ask the NARFE conventioneers to keep the people of Napa Valley, California in their hearts and prayers as they recover from the earthquake that they just had. And also those people, those that are NARFE members would be eligible for funding through the FEEA fund, disaster fund. So please keep that in mind. Members of the Pennsylvania delegation are requested to assemble for a group photo after the Region 2 caucus on Tuesday. I have a special request here. It says, may I request you tell us not to tilt our chairs forward to save a seat. It is a trip and safety hazard. In restaurants, they suggest placing a napkin on the back of the top of the chair. So, I'll make another announcement for the NARFE or the NEEA baskets. They have 17 of them, and they will be on sale till 6 p.m. tonight. And they're right outside our exit doors. And 7 of those baskets are strictly cash. I have breaking news. Scientists have discovered a cure for the chained CPI. It is called NARFE pack pins. So please stop by the NARFE pack table and get yourself a cure. And finally, and if she can, would she please stand? Betty Vanderleest from Texas, I believe that would be over here, is celebrating her 88th birthday today. Betty? Are you in the hall, Betty? Oh, you're back there. Okay, my error. I wasn't sure where exactly where Texas was. Congratulations and happy birthday, Betty. There'll be no gifts, but happy birthday anyways. That concludes the delegates. Run it back. Okay, I made an announcement about delegates meeting up here at the end of the day, I guess for a group picture. Cancel meeting at the end of the day, meet at the end of this session because of circumstances that schedules won't permit doing the picture at the end of the day. So that announcement I made, and I forgot what delegation it was, meet up here today at the end of this session. And Mr. President, that concludes my messages and announcements. Thank you.
Thank you much. 12:15, lunch and learn. 1:30, we'll reconvene. Have a good lunch. We're in recess.